Morning, everybody. Welcome back to this Wednesday edition of the AbelCine booth live presentations. This morning we're going to be talking about VR distribution. I am Mike Nichols, Business Development Manager at AbelCine, based out of the New York office. And I just want to thank you and welcome our panelists today this morning. To my right, we have Alissa Crevier. She's the Global Head of Brand Partnerships at Littlstar. Then we have James Kim, who is the Product Marketing Manager at Nokia. Then we have Miles Perkins, who's the VP of Marketing Communications for Jaunt, and Jill Smolin, Content Relations Manager at Nokia. So guys, I just want to go down and maybe introduce yourselves and give a little blurb about what you do, and and then we'll kind of kick off the panel.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Alissa Crevier from Littlstar. So Littlstar is a global distribution platform. We have only 360 and VR content on our platform, and we distribute all of that content agnostically across every single headset, iOS, Android, Apple TV, Bravia television. So it's a great entryway into VR and 360 where you can actually ingest content on any device. And I run the marketing division there and the brand partnerships division trying to monetize on VR.
Hi, I'm James Kim. I'm from Nokia Ozo, and I'm the product marketing manager for what we call VR technology. So you guys might have heard of the Ozo camera, but in addition to the camera, we also have a full workflow, a software that supports a VR end-to-end ecosystem and flow. So we have a Creator, which is Stitcher, a stitching software, and then we also have Live, which is a real-time VR broadcasting solution, as well as the Player SDK, and then a new technology called the VR reality platform, which is great for this topic because it allows you to distribute highest quality content created through the Ozo at lower bit rates. So we're very excited about that.
I am Miles Perkins, and I'm with Jaunt. Jaunt is an end-to-end solution for creating and distributing high-quality virtual reality. So we'll work with creatives, we'll work with brands, not only to ideate, but take them all the way through the process, from shooting to editing to stitching, and then also to distributing throughout not only our platform, but also other platforms. We recently announced that we're selling the Jaunt 1 camera as of last week, and actually we're working with AbelCine to get that out into the community.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Smolin, and my role at Nokia is really to enable and empower the creatives to get the most out of the technologies we provide them. So we're providing the tools, and I'm there to make sure that we give them everything they need so that we can have really cool stuff to watch at the other end. I spend a lot of my time working with our Live solution, which is just so much fun because you get to go be a groupie at really fun events and get sandy anyway. And then you get to see some really cool content come out the other end. So super happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for coming. So we've had a couple of VR discussions thus far in the panels. Acquisition, production, post-production. So naturally, we want to talk about how to get it out to the end user in the best quality possible. And it's no surprise that these individuals are here because they're all specializing in a specific area of that distribution pipeline that enables the end user to get the best high quality image possible. And that's what we want. We're taking these cameras 4K, 6K, 8K, 18K, and then if it's not being consumed in a quality that is consistent with what we're seeing on regular 2D televisions, then it's not worth it. And these guys are working hard day in and day out to make sure that the experience at the end user is that much better. And so let's talk about where we are today in terms of streaming and delivering content to the end user, either on the computer, iOS, Android, or television. So what's available today now?
In terms of hardware, yeah. So at least on Littlstar, what we're seeing is the most traction through the PlayStation VR. So we were a global launch partner there. I'd say about 60% or so of our views, our video views, are coming from PlayStation VR, and then we see kind of Gear and then Rift and Vive, going down kind of the line. Apple TV it's interesting. I find that Apple TV it's a different generation. People who aren't necessarily going to own a PlayStation VR or have a Alienware to run a headset, they'll go onto Apple TV and use that. And then, of course, WebVR and iOS and Android. iOS is great because you can pop it into a cardboard, which the majority of people have at home. And so that's nice. But I think that we'll see a lot of traction in the next year or so, probably middle of summer, with some new technology that will be coming out of the west coast of the U.S. and hopefully will make headsets a little bit more agnostic and kind of compete with that PlayStation model.
Yeah. So working with creators, we really see a bifurcation of how people think about their distribution platform. So we see creators saying, hey, the easiest way to distribute is through YouTube or Facebook, which has breadth. But at the same time, those technologies may not enable the most immersive experiences. I think when you look at the second groups, they say, I want to deliver the best experiences, but then I have to create my own apps, and those require HMDs. Well, there's limitations on that too, because if you think about the current resolution, well, really max is about 4K, and that's then packed into a larger frame. And so phones now have the inability to decode higher resolution. So how do you solve for that? And that's a challenge that we're thinking about right now. And we are piloting this new tiling technologies that allow you to, instead of delivering the entire spherical video in a highest frame rate, that we just say, hey, you really do look at a small field of view. And so where you're looking at, we're going to deliver the highest quality, whether it's 6K or 8K content, and then degrade the rest, because it's not really within your field of view. And that then allows you to see the highest immersion that the creators intended to do. So you can now deliver 6K, 8K content on actual phones, and we're doing that in our Gear VRs right now. So I think you'll see more of this technology coming to market, more people saying, I want to deliver more immersive experiences, which is higher resolution, maybe even mixed reality use cases that demand a different type of distribution technology.
So one of the things that I really look at is just consumer usage patterns and how people are coming in. So the ability for a creator to deliver content, you really want to enable them to be able to deliver it across the entire spectrum. So from social media, from Facebook or YouTube, which is a very different experience, but it is getting a lot of traction because a lot of people integrate it into their lives all of the time. They're always looking at their social media, so it coming across, they can start to engage with that content. All the way through the entire spectrum, where you're seeing, people popping into Gear VR, the cardboard, the Vive, the Rift, the PlayStation. So you're seeing it across that spectrum, but the ability to provide it in each one of those at high quality, that's what you're really striving for. And I think that's where we're going to start to see people and the consumer integrated into their lives in ways that are much more meaningful. Right now, we know that traditional video, the click-through rate on those in social media space is basically, it's like 0.56, something like that. When you look at a 360 video, when it comes across their feed, the click-through rate jumps up to like 4.28 or something like that. So all of a sudden, you're starting to look and you're going, whoa, people are really starting to engage with this content. And that's in the social media space. Now let's think of the other end of the spectrum, which I like to say there's a sense of mindfulness. When you put on a headset, you've decided that you're going to pay attention to everything in the way that you don't usually do, except maybe reading a book. And so because of that, that level of engagement is so far beyond then the creators also have to think about that also. It's kind of like going into movie theater in some ways, because they are going to pay attention to each and everything, and time kind of slows down for them. So how do you engage with that consumer across that broad spectrum? I think that's both going to be our challenge, and that's also the opportunity that we have in this space.
I think also I come at it from a slightly sideways perspective. I think what we're also seeing is people trying to figure out how to make these fully immersive experiences more presence-based, right? So we have a lot of people talking about 360. We talk about immersive. We think about 3D 360. So for those of us in the space, it's like we think that's VR. Well, then what do you look at? You look at all these headsets, and you look at all the technologies driving the content, and you see, okay, people actually have to have tools to display that content and be able to maximize the use of that content. So you're seeing companies come up with players and ways of distributing at the best, at the highest quality possible that experience, right? You're also seeing people trying to figure out how to, I mean, Miles brought up the cinema, right? So how do we make this kind of lonely, right, very solo experience communal? And so we're beginning to see theaters create integrated spaces for HMD wearers, for people who are actually experiencing this content on their own. And I think we're going to start looking at this as a communal experience alone, I guess. And I think the more interactive we get, right, the more we start engaging with mixed reality, the more we are able to bring in the integration of other devices, other tool sets, like, integrating Unity content or integrating our surroundings into it. I think we're going to see a more enthusiastic, an ever more enthusiastic adoption of the technology.
So with playback technology and distribution technology changing so rapidly and evolving, new information coming to light, all the ins and outs of having distribution, being kind of a mystery, would you encourage content creators to reach out to you guys respectively in the beginning of the process to try and define that path?
Yes, and I'm sorry for diving in here, but yes, emphatically yes. Please talk to us. It's a symbiotic relationship, right? It's a reciprocal relationship. The more we find out what people are doing and what they want to do, the more we can help them. We can help them create this content and deliver this content. And we find ourselves in positions where the need for, or the requests for live content, right, and the ability to deliver live content are highly dependent on bandwidth. And in a situation like this conference, oh boy, it's challenging. And when you go out of the West and you go to the East, where all of a sudden all of this wonderful 4K, 16K, 32K, I don't know, let's just keep it going. They're barely scratching too. They're barely scratching too. And so what we want to do is, please, creators, come to us and let us help you solve these problems. That's what I do. It's what I love to do. Create the pipeline.
And to that point, I think that this is a new medium. It is not cinema and it's not television. It's its own thing, and it hasn't all the way found itself. It's definitely here. There's no question about that. But creatively, how do we engage with the creative community to bring along a vocabulary that doesn't exist? So I like to kind of equate things a little bit to like the late 1800s, where you had a wide shot and then a medium shot, and that's it. That's it. No overhead, no surround, all of the vocabulary that we're used to in looking at, like I'm looking at this reel over here with fast cuts and all these different things going on, all of that has meaning. And so when I first got into the VR space, there were these rules. There was this white paper of stuff you cannot do and you should not do. And that wasn't the case. It's that, first of all, you need to think about it a little bit different maybe, and then also maybe the audience has to start to first understand what that is and have experience with it so that we can continue. So, and then to your point, we need to start communicating, and when people want to come in with great ideas, you want to give them a foundation to work off of so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and they know where we stand right now, and we know where audiences are willing to go and where they're not willing to go. It's just enabling the creatives, strip out all the technology, let them be creative.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really great point. Like, we are in the very early stages of this type of storytelling medium, and we have learned, at least on the Nokia side, we've learned a lot about what creators have tried to do and what has worked and what has not. And it's really about building this community of learning that we can move this medium forward. So one example was, I think a creator had tried to put an Ozo that was moving slowly and then change the horizon to the sideways, and immediately it's like almost vomit-inducing. But there are some techniques that within storytelling that creators are trying to push the limits towards, and it's all about creating this community of learning that enables us to push forward the capability of distribution of your content.
And one thing to that point is when I say that the lack of vocabulary, but then on the other side of it, sound is far beyond. I mean, we get to bring everything we know about sound in cinema and in television, everything, and then let's amplify that by 100, because now I can start to have things behind me actually matter, and it directs your attention, and you can start to do like these amazing things. I mean, if you walk into this space with your eyes closed, you actually kind of have a sense of what's going on around you. We need to have that reflected in this, and it's going to make the experience that much better. So that's an amazing opportunity.
But, and also, I mean, also all these points are just kind of dovetailing, right? We started in the late 1800s as photography was kind of the new thing. People started thinking about immersion then and creating stereoscopic images, right? So we've been trying to do this for a long time. We've been creating panoramas since the late 1700s, I think. The first one was, I think, the middle of 17 something in London. And anyway, and so now we're so privileged to be in this time where we're able to use all of these tools and make them do what we want, that now we are challenged as creators to really step outside of our cinematic sensibilities, where everything is presented to us in a very time-based, linear fashion. And now what we're looking at, and what I'm constantly challenging creators to do, because I want nothing more than to give them the tools, right? I want them to start thinking about things in a space-based, right, design-based storytelling medium, because that's what we're talking about now. We're talking about a new kind of theater, a new kind of experience. And yeah, we're at the beginning. We're at the real beginning, like we always are. And we're so, like I said again, we're just really privileged to be in this time where we have a choice of tools and a very robust and a more increasingly robust distribution system. It's just going to get better.
And even, I think getting back to your question, would you recommend that a content creator come to one of us and have a conversation before they jump into it? I mean, I definitely think that there are tools that enable content creators just from an R&D perspective, like heat mapping technology that we've used and we have on our content. So content creators are able to see, to Miles' point, like if somebody is not looking in if a consumer is not looking in the direction in which the content creator wants them to look, you can put an audio cue in that space. So really being able to see where people are looking through, tracking where they're looking in a headset has been, I think, a really helpful tool to content creators. So we'd take them through that process of here's what it looks like, here's how it can be used, and then we can go and come up with a distribution plan after the piece is done.
So, along those lines, we're talking about, I guess, narrative creators, but let's shift a little bit towards brands and those that look to put content online and see some form of return, whether or not that's eyeballs or monetization. let's start throwing around some buzzwords that they love to hear, like metrics and analytics, and what sort of feedback can your platforms give the brands to analyze the effectiveness of their online campaigns?
Well, heat maps is one. So we did something with Invisible, and it was a series that Doug Lyman directed. And one of our brands that came in to work and to sponsor that was Lexus. And the ability for Lexus to see a heat map of when their car comes around the corner that zeroes in on that logo that's on the grille is something that it probably gives them warm, fuzzy kind of feelings when they know that, oh, that was really effective. The thing in the metric side of things, I think what's been going on out there right now is people, instead of calling things multipliers in terms of engagement and impressions, they've been referring to things as dividers. So just because something comes across your Facebook feed and you happen to catch it for a millisecond doesn't necessarily mean that that is actually an impression, and it's definitely not engagement. And so I think that advertisers and brands are starting to recognize that. However, when we're in this space, if someone actually clicks on something, that is engagement. And if they just scrolled like that, oh, hold on, that's a whole nother level of engagement. And if they're seeing it in their headset, now that's a multiplier, because they are one-on-one with that brand. The other component of this that I like to really drive home is that the engagement that they have with this medium is an emotional engagement. So when I go in, if someone's not looking at me in my eye in an experience, you feel a little uneasy. But when you do tell that story really, really well, the person feels an emotional attachment to what's going on. Everybody wants you to have an emotional attachment to their brand pillars. If you can deliver that, that's the top of the top right there. And that's what this medium is actually doing. I mean, we did something with North Face, and if you look at their brand pillars, to explore, to, push the bound. Hey, that thing you were exploring, and I was definitely pushing the boundaries of what I'm willing to do, because I'm never going to climb El Capitan. And I felt like I did. And it definitely made me feel what that brand is all about without them having to shove that brand in my face.
And I think that also, I mean, to your point, after that experience, the memory of what it felt like to be on top of that mountain. It's not just when you're in the headset. You take that memory with you. So the brand, the feeling of the brand becomes a memory because you actually experience it. So it's just a very powerful way in which a brand can get its message out. And yeah, I mean, I also think that there are, like you said, heat mapping technology that brands are loving, and they're able to do some R&D too on new features. Say Lexus comes in and they have specific features within a new car. Where are people looking? Are they looking at XYZ features versus the old features? And does that mean that the model needs to be changed? So we're finding that a lot of brands are interested in looking at heat maps for that reason too.
And building on top of that, I think it's interesting to see the trend, at least in the live virtual reality space, where advertisers are looking at ad placements, because now VR has depth mapping included. So I can actually say, hey, in a soccer game or football for non-Americans, if there's a billboard behind a player, I can actually get the accurate depth of that specific billboard. And because I know your profile of you wearing a headset, I know your user profile, I know your preferences, I could actually target you and send you a different ad than someone else who's looking at that same piece of space. So now I can think about monetizing content within the VR space wherever it may be within depth. And you don't have to take away from the actual live experience itself, because there's occlusion there. So I think it's very interesting to see how content creators or even broadcasters are looking to monetize on that within the VR experience. Of course, we now see e-ticketing being one sort of avenue of actually of monetization for live. So I know Vantage TV had launched a new behind the scenes or even VIP experiences on top of actual concerts. and using that as a monetization vehicle within the VR space as well.
And actually, bring up Vantage, where they just did, and I think again, and I obviously come at this from a very different side. I don't know metrics, and I love learning about them too, so it's great. But what I'm seeing is in the realm of people understanding or really playing with what they are presented, creators like Vantage TV just did at Coachella. They just used the depth and the integration of other technologies to do a whole Easter egg hunt, right? They had external content built into their player that could totally be applied to products, and maybe it was, I don't know. You're also seeing, though, to the El Capitan example, VR, fully immersive sound, fully immersive stereoscopic 3D, 360, is a visceral experience. So you have an opportunity to really affect your audience on a very personal level. There was an experience, I think it was last year, I don't remember, where Man on Wire, if any of you guys got to see this thing, it was an extraordinary experience, right? They put you in the headset, and you were on top of the World Trade Center. It's about a guy who tight-roped across between the two World Trade Centers. That happened in 1970-something, maybe somebody knows. And so this movie was the fictionalization of the depiction of this experience. So you're in the headset on top of the World Trade Center. They're blowing wind at your face. You're on a concrete floor. They put a taped down cable, right? So you're standing on a cable. It was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying because your brain doesn't know that you're not on top of the freaking World Trade Center. Your body doesn't. You should, but no. It was so hard to cross that floor, the 6 feet of floor. And I think that as people kind of cotton on to the idea that they can have that kind of interaction, I think we're going to see some really cool stuff happen.
But there is a trap in this whole thing, though, also, for the industry as a whole, is jumping into this to make commercials that are just content commercials. And that part of it, I think consumers have a very interesting relationship with commercials. When we're willing to let them into our lives, when we're not willing to. And you see that when, let's say there's our TV show that we watch, and we're going to watch it on demand, and I didn't pay anything, and they forced me to watch the commercial. Okay, give me one or two, and then I'll continue on, but if you give me too many, I'm gone. And so there's this kind of relationship, and I think we need to watch out also in this. We need to make sure that the content itself is a value add, that it's giving you something, because we need to trust that the consumer is going to understand the brand that it's associated with. You talked about memories. You are giving people memories. One thing I love about these shows, I was in the back of a room for a show that we recorded with my buddies because I wasn't going to fight to get to the front. And then I came back into the office and they put it on. My memory right now of that experience is actually being on stage and watching it. And it's a stronger memory than I have otherwise. So therein lies an opportunity for someone to bring me that experience and bring me that memory that's going to enhance something that I did on a larger scale. So.
No, it's so true. And then it goes right back to the live thing. And our most recent experience was at Coachella, where we had cameras on the stage, right? We got a camera behind the drummer. We've got one stage left. We've got one in the center. We got them out in the audience. And totally, I just wanted to stay in the truck in the headset. I didn't want to go out there. I'm on the stage with the drummer. I'm cool. That's awesome. So I get the experience. I don't. 120 people in underwear, it's all right. 120,000 people, I'm okay missing it. But so being in the truck, having this experience, I was much happier, and I would be much happier. And this is an experience that I would pay for. And ultimately, I'm a consumer, right? I just want to watch really cool stuff. That's all. So yeah, put me on stage with let me be a groupie of Visceral Group. I'm totally down.
And I think it's also important to understand that the average consumption time on an HMD is about 1.6 minutes. And I know that's growing, but that's quite a small period of time that you have to capture audience attention, deliver your message in an immersive way, and or monetize. So, and it's definitely growing, but there is still a very small, short period of time where you have engagement.
Yeah, it's a fine line especially for branded content creators that, to Miles' point, you can't just create a commercial in the traditional sense and stuff it into an HMD and hope it works. You've got to create an engagement and something that's memorable. And I think part of the reason why you have, what you do in terms of brand relations at your respective companies is to usher that content through and work with the creatives. Now, is that fair to say that you guys are reaching out and being proactive, or are you just kind of sitting back and letting them come to you for how that works, or both, or what's the desired approach? Let's go there.
I think both. I mean, it's an interesting landscape right now. I think there are a lot of people who are wanting to get into this. They've actually written, whether we're talking about brands or we're talking about broadcast companies or anything, they want this, and they've written this in as a line item this year. The only thing is they don't quite know how to deal with it. And so I think it is up to all of us to hold someone's hand and walk them through this process, because it is not the tried and true. It's not, and I always say, don't stand in the hammock. I've already stood in the hammock. You don't need to. Let me take you through this.
And we know how receptive commercial companies and advertising agencies are to ideas, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they're just like, yes, tell us how to do our jobs. We love that.
Right. Yeah.
But also, I think all of us have programs, right? We're all very, very interested as companies and as creative supporters and as creatives. We're all really invested in what we do. So we reach out, and we're receptive to people reaching back to us, and the goal is we like it. We're fans. We want to see cool stuff. We want people to make cool stuff so we can keep making cool technology to help them make cool stuff, and so the cycle goes. And get really cool ways of watching this cool stuff, please.
And I think all of us up here also, make no mistake about it, I think all of us understand the need for us to work together to make this a great platform, the next best platform, and all boats rise in this space. So each one of us, I mean, we know, our companies know one another, we work together, we find opportunities to partner, and I think that it's going to take that kind of mentality across the spectrum in order to push things forward. And I'm really optimistic about it. I think people are understanding that this is a really big thing, and everybody is going to have a role to play within it. And the best thing we can do is work with one another to make the best possible content and distribute it as wide as possible, so we have as many people coming back to us and sharing their experiences and sharing their mind share with this medium.
I think it definitely goes both ways. We're definitely out in the field pitching a content slate, branded entertainment specifically, to agencies, to brand direct. They're also coming to us. When they're coming to us, the majority of the time, we're finding we need to take a lot of time to evangelize the medium itself. And I know that all of us probably spend a lot of time doing that. Sometimes I think ideas come in the door that could be done in 2D, and I always say, if you can do it in 2D, do it in 2D. But if it's wanting to explore the medium, let's think of a creative idea together, and we'll sit down and brainstorm with brands. And so we're just hoping that as Miles said, as we're all working on growing this industry together, that brand pieces will be the next to come once the audience is at a certain level.
Yeah, in the panels that I've been listening to and moderating, that theme, all boats rise, it's been constant throughout them all, and it's true. I mean, yes, you guys do have overlapping business models in some respects, but it's great seeing especially from the hardware manufacturing side, there's almost this symbiotic push to make the overall product, when you get to distribution, the best that it could be. And I think it's great, having being hardware partners with Nokia and Jaunt. From my perspective, it's great because you guys are constantly taking the technical challenges and making that less part of the equation, and focusing on making the delivery the most important aspect of it. And I think having the outlet, of each individual platform for distribution, kind of coexisting is great, especially for the creator who doesn't have any idea how to navigate the whole landscape. What do we do? If I shot with this camera, can I release it here? And I think that thought is becoming less of a worry and more of how can I make the best content.
And definitively, let me say, we do. I mean, in our own studio, we will shoot with the Ozo. We'll shoot with whatever is the right tool for whatever it is. As a matter of fact, our cloud services, we also support the Ozo camera as well, because we know this is what the creators need. They need to have this vibrant ecosystem where they have optionality. They have the ability to be creative and not locked into one way of working. The creative process is exactly that. It's a process, and you have to let that person operate within some level of comfort that they know, and the familiarity within this. And so we want to do everything that we can to provide them that kind of level of comfort.
I think when you're trying, this is a new market, and I think when you're trying to create a new market in a new medium, fragmentation really is your enemy. And so it's very critical that we are all working together to provide the breadth of endpoints that creators want their content to be consumed by the most amount of people, and that really should be our goal. Secondly is we really should be providing the technologies that continue to evolve the medium of how creators want to use this medium. So one example is mixed reality is becoming this new way of threading your narrative. And so we at Nokia are sort of playing around with that on the playback side, saying how are we thinking about depth, and how are we thinking about bringing in synthetic content to sort of augment immersion or augment the storytelling experience, and play around with that. So I think it's really critical that we solve for fragmentation of the distribution side, and also provide the new technologies that are new sort of storytelling mediums that also go through the entire distribution pipeline, so end users can experience it and creators can create it.
Yeah, it's it's great that the coming from a 2D production background and a 2D equipment management background, this level of and I'm sure there are faces in here that would agree with that. This level of working together is it's kind of unprecedented, and it's great because it ultimately benefits those creating, and me being in the broker in between the manufacturers and the creators. It makes my job a lot easier because I can freely promote it too, because there's no magic bullet camera in any space, 2D, 3D, 360 VR. Nothing is going to do everything that everybody wants. So there's specific applications for each tool, and for me to comfortably say this is the right tool for that application, this is the right tool for that application, it's great. And I know that at the end of the day, the distribution platforms are doing what they need to do to make sure that the content that's created is able to be shown in the best possible way. So what's next now? Now that we're here and Ozo Reality is becoming a thing, and Jaunt's continually upgrading both their cloud services and the offering through the hardware, and Littlstar's adopting new algorithms and new compression. So what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we've seen a lot of movement toward brands wanting to create their own apps, which causes a problem, I think, in the industry in terms of then we have more siloed content in different places. So I think us kind of thinking about how to bring all of those apps together in one place is something that we're trying to solve even more than we have already. So I'd say.
And I think I touched upon this, but mixed reality is sort of the next evolution of VR storytelling. And how do we solve for that? And also here at Nokia Technologies is, look, there are cameras that are going to be supporting 6K, 8K content. But then at the endpoints, you can't render that content or decode that content in a meaningful way. And so you have to degrade quality. So how do you solve for that? And here at NAB, we've announced the Ozo Reality platform, which basically says that allows OVP, CDNs, OTTs to have tiling technology that enable you to drive the immersive experiences. So in your field of view, have the highest immersion with spatial audio and depth carriage with lower bandwidth. So you can actually get 8K content at about 12 megabits per second, which is pretty great. So it's how do we get this great level of immersion that's captured and then delivered to the end user. That is what we have to solve for.
I think one thing about any medium that is new, we think that we have to innovate. Like, now, next week we're going to have something new, and then the week after that. And I think that there's a lot of people that are going, okay, when are you going to stop innovating? And when can we just figure out something that is going to give me a platform to operate? Right now, I think one thing that I think is actually consistent here, although we will talk about, yes, we are doing things, we are fine, but what we're doing is we're doing things to make that experience for you better. We want the end consumer to be in a space where they go, yes, I understand why this is a value add in my life, and I know exactly how I'm going to fit it into the patterns of media consumption. And that's, I think, we should have a real focus on that, and a focus on the creatives also. How can we give them something where we can kind of strip all of the crazy technology away so that they can really just focus on being creative, telling a story, and giving the end consumer something that is really compelling and is a value add in their life. So I think we do have these challenges. We know that the delivery devices on cell phones, largely, cell phone manufacturers drive display technology. They just do. And let's give them a chance to catch up with everything that we're doing so that we can have this amazing experience.
But also, I think first of all, Miles took everything out of my brain, but okay, he has a habit of doing that, though. But I also think we're solving, like we've always done as an industry, we solve for what's available to us now. So right now, our challenges as consumers, right, we don't have any freaking bandwidth. I mean, we can't look at this beautiful content because we can't get it. So as technology manufacturers, Nokia is figuring out, okay, fine, we're going to offer viewpoint adaptive streaming, right? So where you look is what you get. And when you look there, then it looks really awesome. But behind you, it doesn't have to look awesome because you're not looking there. And that's where we're looking. I remember back, I mean, you guys all remember this, when 4K, everybody's talking 4K, 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 oh my gosh, 4K. And they're making all of these, they're capturing, and there were no pipelines that could handle it. And then the pipelines were created, and everybody could handle 4K to a large part. And now we're looking at more Ks. Like it's an infinite value that we're trying to provide, to the point where I don't even know if I can see it anymore. But we're trying to give everybody this beautiful content. And so what we're doing as manufacturers and as technology providers, solution providers, we are trying to solve for what's out there right now, provide solutions for what's coming down the road, so that as the technology gets better, as our bandwidth gets better, we're ready to provide the content that can match that delivery system.
Well, I guess now would be a bad time to say that we have a new 16K HDR VR 360 camera. That is a completely new format? No? Okay.
Exactly
that's not
my
true.
point.
That's not true. To Miles's point, yes, we need to kind of slow down the exciting innovation. We got the next great thing, and just focus on existing hardware. And I think, just to kind of wrap this discussion up, I can't speak highly enough of the continual evolution of the Jaunt and Nokia cameras because they're just, from where they were months ago to where they are now in both the hardware side and the image signal processing side and the distribution side. It's just they're listening, they're getting better, and they're improving. And they started out here, which was great already, and they're just taking it up. With every bit of feedback they get, they listen. That is something that, from the 2D world, it's a little unprecedented, and it's great to be a part of because it allows me to comfortably, do my job. So I want to thank everybody. You want to just let everybody know where they can find you, either physically or virtually?
Yeah,
You go.
Yeah, we're in the North Hall in 1002 VR in the VR Pavilion area.
And we're in C Hall in 2436.
Excellent. And Alyssa's right here, so I think you're going to find her physically, and then I bet you she's going to get on a plane and go home. Because if there's one thing I could say about Littlstar is they're never in one place for more than 5 minutes at a time. They're like, she changed the company name from Littlstar to Supernova because you guys are all over the place. Any questions? Anything you guys want to ask before we let these guys run back into the wild?
Yeah, so it's adaptive based on where the viewer is viewing. So our player SDK knows your field of view, and based on that, it actually picks up the highest resolution tiles from the CDN of the OVP and then renders it onto the actual player itself. Yeah.
I can take that. So there's two aspects of it. I've seen some amazing, in film festivals, some amazing films shot on iPhone. I have. So and there's a place for that. You know what I mean? More power to some of these other solutions. That's not really what we're going after. I think we're going after really a higher end. Now, when you're talking about the budgets that are available to this, I definitely hear you. And I think that the conversation has to be a little bit more about, well, what's the entire package instead of it's just a VR thing that is going to be in Vive or in Rift or in Play. What is the entire value proposition of why you need to, as a brand or whoever the client is, why you need to be going into this space? And when you start to answer that, and that's what we're trying to do, to be able to say, no, we're going to be able to deliver you the views you need in social media, but then also I'm going to be able to deliver you all of these views, and everybody's going to perceive you as being a thought leader because you're in this space. Not only that, but then also we're also going to do something that's location-based with your brand, because we're going to go into this place. Oh, and then by the way, you can also upsell into providing a nice quality cardboard. So it's like it's creating a campaign around it that's more than just the content itself. I think that's where the opportunity is right now, and that's where we're going to see larger and larger budgets come about this, because it's an amazing opportunity that you have to do an integrated campaign.
I mean, honestly, I carry a Theta with me everywhere. It's the best way to capture, just like, boom, I've got it. Or if I want to explain the concept to somebody. So yeah, I think there is a place for these things. I do think also we come from the visual effects industry, so we're very, very familiar with the entire pipeline, right? And I think that can't be disregarded. I really think that, and unfortunately, sometimes the folks we work with and for need a little bit of help in that area to understand, yes, absolutely, you can get yourself a $50 camera, $300 camera, whatever. It's going to look like that. And if you want it to look like a $50,000 camera, you're going to have to do a whole lot of work that's going to cost you a whole lot of money. And I know, believe me, being in this industry for a billion years, the pre-production doesn't talk to the post-production, and we have to. I mean, we've been fighting this our whole careers. So and unfortunately, you're in that position now. I mean, we're all in that position. We have to educate each other, and we have to educate our clients, and we have to do it in a way that they can see the difference, and that it's important to them that their brand, their image, looks like a $50,000 image, a $100,000, not a $50 image. So it's incumbent on us, unfortunately.
Well, thank you again for coming, everybody. This was great, and I hope you all learned something about VR distribution. And thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.